Hey, this is Chris Shiflett. Welcome to The Blues Kitchen.
Has this old world lost its goddamn mind? It's been so long.
Chris Shiflett is currently on tour in support of his brand new record, Hard Lessons, slated for release on 14th of June this year. A radical departure from his day job with the Foo Fighters, his new LP was produced by Dave Cobb at Nashville's RCA Studios. We discussed the country and rock and roll tinged album, the Bakersfield sound, life as a solo artist, and Chris performs a version of Buck Owens Together Again. And while you're watching, subscribe to the channel for regular episodes of The Blues Kitchen Presents. Chris.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to The Blues Kitchen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Man, absolute pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. So, you're in the middle of a run of sold-out UK dates.
Yes.
Just come off the back of South by Southwest.
Yep.
Played the Luck reunion.
Yep.
Band's flying pretty high right now, right?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really, really busy. We've been touring a bunch and getting ready to put this record out and all the kookiness that goes along with it. Yeah.
Well, in a short while, you're going to do a version of a Buck Owens tune,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
So we'll get to that shortly. But let's dig into your new album. Coming out on 14th of June.
Yeah. Well, actually, the 21st of June in the UK.
Okay.
It's offset, so it's the 14th of June everywhere else, and then the 21st here.
So you're just keeping us waiting a little bit.
That's right. That's right. Well, I forget what the logic was. There was like some, Miley Cyrus or somebody. There was a logic to it, Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the record and.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 2 tunes that are available, which you've done for us very kindly in session today. Who did you get together for it? Where did you get yourself set up? What kind of vibe did you get into? Was it a quick record? Do you take a long time to put the whole thing together?
Well, it's interesting. As long as I've been making like sort of solo records and stuff, side band records, I always wind up finishing a Foo Fighter tour cycle and then getting some songs together and then figuring out going and making a record and getting them in. And it seems that like every time I do it, by the time I get the record out, Foo Fighters are working again, because it's not like the gaps aren't really that big, even if it seems that way, we're usually doing something.
Yeah, it seems like the Foos are kind of
Yeah,
constantly doing stadiums around the world.
Very much a full-time life, you know what I mean? So I got to kind of figure out the little cracks to slide in my solo stuff. So I made a record a couple years ago out in Nashville with Dave Cobb producing. And his house guys, basically, a lot of the guys that he uses a lot.
Yeah.
Chris
kind of like the new
A
A-team of Nashville.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Amazing players, and so when I put that record out, we were already finished with the last Foo Fighter record. Mm-hmm. So it was like we were going into a Foo Fighter tour. I really didn't have any time to go out and do shows. So this time I wanted to try to make it while I was on the road with Foos during the last album cycle, which was tricky. So I was writing a lot of songs while I was touring and getting it all together. And then I went out just on some little gaps out to Nashville and made it again with Dave Cobb producing again. And I think it's a little bit different than West Coast Town. It definitely leans a little more rock and roll than the last one did. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think everything I do ultimately leans a little rock and roll, but this one's, it's just sort of crunchy guitar tones and that sort of stuff. But
Dave Cobb seems to be this name that is just cropping up with everyone at the moment. He did the Chris Stapleton stuff. We did a session with Rival Sons not so long ago, and he's like their guy. He seems to be like the guy that's smashing it out in Nashville. And he's taken over RCA Studios, hasn't he?
Yes, and I've gotten to make my last couple records there, and it's been amazing. It's cool because, I interviewed Dave Cobb. That's how I met him.
For your podcast?
Yeah. I don't even remember at this point how I got his phone number, but I just cold called him. Said, hey man, could I interview you? I do this podcast. And he was like, yeah, and I was going to be in Nashville. And after I interviewed him, I was like, just thought in my head, I gotta make a record with that guy. He's so cool,
Yeah.
And I'm such a big fan of the work that he does. So I think I called him like a week later after I interviewed him, and I was just like, hey man, I want to make a solo record. Could you, would you produce it? And he just said, yeah, sure. And it just happened that some band that he was supposed to work with had dropped out. A couple months. It was just like it just lined up.
Stars aligned.
Yeah, and so it was great because I didn't know him going into that. I didn't know any of the guys, and I was so nervous going into it. And he told me don't do demos. I don't listen to demos. I don't
Really?
Yeah, but of course, I did rounds of demos anyway, and I was, and I figured out going in there that's not the best way to do it. That's not his process. So I wanted to this time around. I wanted way more jump into his process. So I went in a lot less prepared, or a lot less thought out, and just kind of threw it in the Dave Cobb blender
And I imagine between him and this kind of all-star cast of musicians,
Yeah.
they got everything together in no time.
It's
right?
really cool. It's so fast the way he works. I mean, it's amazing. I've never made records like that before. You go in there and it's me and Dave and the rhythm section on my new record. It's Chris Powell and Brian Allen playing drums and bass, and I will play the song, and we'll listen to it, or they'll listen to it, and then Dave kind of wraps his head around it and makes some suggestions. Why don't you cut that, get rid of that? What if we put this chord there, And then we kind of jam through it acoustically, and then we'll go jam through it on the instruments loud, a couple of times, and then we start taping it. And I mean, usually like, maybe 2, 3, 4 takes maybe at the most, and he'll be like, okay, take the first half of the third one and the back half of the fourth and put it in, and you go and you listen to it, and you're like, all right, that sounds like a take.
So you're really putting your record in his hands at that point?
Oh, big time, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So before we get to the Buck Owens thing, getting deep into your bio, I think this is in the depths of Wikipedia somewhere, saying that you were like pretty hotshot football player when you were a kid. Or should I say soccer player?
That is totally false, and I'll tell you
Really?
why. Yes, it's a funny thing because I never thought of it before, but like I'm sure it's not a coincidence that I played soccer up until right about the time I started playing guitar.
Same thing happened for a lot of us.
Yeah, and then I never played again, and then I started playing again in my 20s. I started looking around for like pickup games and stuff, and it was so funny because I could not figure out, why am I so fucking terrible? And I realized after I had kids why, and it's because you don't really get very good until about the age that I stopped playing it.
When you picked up a Telecaster.
Right, exactly. You know what I mean? So I'm an enthusiastic player more than I'm a gifted technician.
This one, big question.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most prestigious band you're involved with, Chevy Metal, right? When are you getting back together again? LA's best covers band, right?
It's funny. I actually haven't done a Chevy gig for a while.
Oh, really?
I have.
For anyone that doesn't know, can we just explain what it is? Because it sounds like a lot of fun.
Chevy Metal is Taylor's long-running cover band.
And it's ZZ Top.
It's
Queen.
It's everything.
Everything.
It's everything you would expect it to be.
Yeah.
It's Sabbath. It's Van Halen. It's it's Queen. It's all.
Sounds filth.
It's all the good stuff. And every now and again I'll he'll still ask me to fill in or something. But it's really like Chevy Metal in my mind is Taylor and Wiley, the bass player singer, and then there's been a long string of guitar players, of which I am not one at the moment.
So on to Buck Owens.
Yes.
Thank you for coming in and picking a cover for us.
Yeah.
I feel very privileged. Why did you pick Buck Owens?
It's interesting. There's this thing called the Bakersfield sound, and when I first started getting into, I had gotten into like a lot of like Son Volt and Wilco and Uncle Tupelo and all that sort of stuff through the singer in my old band. Tony Sly was the singer of No Use for a Name, and he was really into that stuff and would play it all the time in the band. He'd play it on acoustic guitar, and that's what really got me into all that alt country stuff was him. And so, how it is, you just want to, you're like, well, what influenced them? And I want to go listen to that. And I asked a buddy of mine for some advice on what to listen to, and Buck Owens was one of the first things that he mentioned, and I just dove in. And once I did, like, growing up at the time that I did in California, I didn't know it at the time how much that music had been a cultural influence, not on me necessarily exactly, I was listening to Kiss and stuff like that, but it was around, it was in the air, and once I found it and connected to it, I don't know, just.
At what point, if you don't mind me asking, what age were you? Because sometimes it kind of takes getting maybe to your late 20s or early 30s to get country music.
Well, that's when I got it. It was like mid 20s when I got into all that alt country stuff, and then maybe a bit after that when it's Merle Haggard and Buck and Wynn Stewart and all that music. I just kind of dove into it.
So you're gonna do Together Again.
Yeah.
Was there a particular time when you heard that song that resonated with you?
There's something about that tune. It's just so kind of like, I think of Buck Owens, a lot of his songs are happy. And they're, a lot of them are almost like borderline silly, lyrically, like fooling around or whatever. But that one's such a melancholy. It's like lyrically, it's like positive. It's like we're back together with her. But there's just something about it that pulls your heartstrings. That's a song that I listen to a lot driving.
Road music.
You're on like a long trip alone in your car. It's like, I'm gonna kill myself. So, and then that song comes on, you're like, oh, drive into traffic. But that's what the best shit does, you know? That's what the good songs do that to you.
Fantastic, man. I reckon it's time for your performance, if that's all right.
Absolutely. So this is Chris Shiflett, and I'm going to do a version of my favorite Buck Owens song, Together Again.
Together again. My tears have stopped falling. The long, lonely nights are now at an end. The key to my heart you hold in your hand, and nothing else matters now. We're together again. Together again. The gray skies are gone. You're back in my arms. Now where you belong. The love that I knew is living again, and nothing else matters now. We're together again, and nothing else matters now. We're together again.
Subscribe to the Blues Kitchen for live performances and interviews with the hottest blues, soul, country and roots musicians in the world today.
I know what you're feeling.